We're on. We're on.
Yeah, you love Survivor.
Yeah, I do. I love Survivor.
Weird.
It's just a good game.
Yeah. How would you go?
Well, I was kind of meant to do it a couple of years ago. No, last year. And
why not? Why didn't you do it?
Well, because the production date was brought forward to late final series. So I just couldn't do it, and it didn't marry up. The timing didn't marry up. Actually, it was 2 years ago. And so then the production company that do Survivor, Endemol Shine, also do MasterChef. And so they said, hey, well, you can't do Survivor. Would you think about doing MasterChef? And I thought, MasterChef.
My mum loved you on MasterChef.
No, yeah, well, it's interesting.
My mum loved you
it's
on
opened up
MasterChef.
a whole new demographic of sort of conversations and network and mums.
Man, do you know what's really funny? Like my mum, and I don't know if anyone else's mum's like this out there, but like I go, sometimes when you're trying to fix your mum's phone, she goes, my Instagram's not working. I look on it and I look through who she's following, and it's like people from reality shows like 7 years ago. Yeah. Like there was this really weird person that she was following the other day. If you're a Big Brother fan, this is like Big Brother from like 7 years ago. There was like this Lawson and Kat that were going together, and there was like this scandal, and Mum still follows it. And I'm
keeps up to date.
Keeps up to date with what's on. Mum, you don't need to follow her anymore. Like it's not a thing.
They've lost relevance. Yeah. So round one this year, pre-season, went to a function at the MCG, and usually you go along to a pre-football season function, and you're walking in, and it's how can the D's go back to back this year? And anyway, all the women coming up it wasn't how's Christian Petrarca going to go, it's what was in that tomato consomme that you made on MasterChef. It was like, this is great, this is so really good. So because it's fresh and something new, like I was totally happy to talk about all of that stuff rather than the same old footy stuff.
Just a funny one on that as well. Christian Petrarca at the moment, I don't know if you've seen, you're big on TikTok, but he's creating some very nice menus on TikTok. I think he's copying your MasterChef vibes and starting to put some menus together.
Stay in your lane, Christian. Yeah, stay in your lane, Christian. So meant to do Survivor, ended up doing MasterChef instead. And but Survivor's still something that I would love to do.
Wow.
The reason we brought it up is I saw you got the Mark Wales book.
Yep. And Sam Cash, his partner.
The defending Survivor champ, Mark. Yeah, the legend. And then his wife, Sam, was on it too, and they were absolute savages. And I went to a lunch for Danny Frawley, the launch of the Danny Frawley Centre. Yep. So Spud's Lunch it was called. It was about a couple of months ago. And I walked in and sat on the table, and there were, Andrew Bassett, St Kilda president, and I'm going around the table, and I look to my right, and there's Mark and Sam. And so I had just a total sort of fanboy moment, and I actually took selfies. And James, my oldest boy, he's 7. That's our thing.
Yeah.
We sit on the couch when Survivor's on. We watch Survivor. Sometimes have to record it and then watch it a bit earlier because it finishes late. But took the photo, sent it through to James, and he completely freaked out that I was with Mark and Sam from
so
Survivor.
Good.
He loved it.
How good's that?
So Max King, Jade Gresham, he's all about Survivor people, and
So
he was pumped. And they were great, they were awesome, amazing stories, both of them. And I've listened to both of them on the podcast, and they've just got great stories.
Yeah, the
Great
energy
stories.
on them. I remember Sam and Mark, they both came in, but when Sam came in, we ended up speaking for another hour post the show.
Yeah,
and it was just one of the most incredible women I've ever
ultra
met.
marathons, right?
Everything, but that's not even doesn't even.
But it's
the brink
it's
of
an
what she
insight
does.
into
and the way she can articulate
mindset
things and everything. It was great.
Yeah,
just
great.
on Survivor, lastly, how would you play the game if you were on it? What would you do? And if you're going to go on it, you can't give away too much.
When the last season was on and Gavin Wanganeen was in early, I was watching, and I know Gavin well. We went to Shanghai together for the Port Adelaide St Kilda. That's something we won't be doing again.
Yep.
Going to Shanghai for a game of footy.
I don't think
that's on the list. That's on the. I reckon that's been crossed off. He went in and he buddied up with the Alpha Dogs straight away, and I just thought, Gavin, come on, you can't put a target on your back. So I think it's kind of the way you would have to play it. Is if you've sort of been an athlete or whatever, just try as much as possible to be a good guy and not a physical threat. And that's, I reckon, how Mark played it. So I don't know.
You'd fall into that position quickly because I remember Sean Hampson when he went on too. He played it pretty well.
Yeah.
He played it quite well.
Yeah, he played it well.
Boy.
Lee Castledyne's played it pretty well. But listen to me.
Yeah.
Sound like a full Survivor nerd, but I do like it.
I'd struggle just with the
You'd be good. You'd
Nah,
have good social game.
Nah,
Come on.
I think I hate it too much. If someone like dogged me, I'd be really flat, and I'd take it personally.
Yeah,
I'd get really 100%.
upset.
I'd get
To
really
taking
emotional.
the emotion out of it would be impossible for me.
I have zero emotional filter.
Yeah.
I would start crying.
Yeah,
Straight away.
I'm the same.
Yeah. No, mate, incredible to have you in today. I really do appreciate it. It's going to be, really cool, really surreal. I think for me, and not to embarrass you too much, but like it feels a bit like a dream because I grew up and I didn't love footy growing up. Like I really enjoyed it. But you, for me, were just like everything. Like I'm sure you get that a lot, but it's just a massive flex for me to be able to like sit in here today, have you on the show. And even when I remember playing footy, I think we played against each other in an early game and it was the first time I was like, Jesus Christ, he's a big boy.
Yeah.
You're a nice guy to me as well, which is good.
Well,
yeah, you were
that's
nice.
good.
You said something nice. I think you said, I can't remember, but it was something nice.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the back pocket.
Because the reason I was scared, actually, and this is a funny story, was we had a young guy from St Kilda that got delisted from St Kilda and came to Carlton for 1 year.
Yeah.
Nick Hine, I think his name was.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Hine. So he's a rookie for
Nicholas
both.
Hine.
Nicholas Hine.
Number 20.
Number 21, I think.
Yeah,
21.
21, yeah.
Well, maybe he was 21 with us. And he told a story one day. I think you had to get up and tell like your most embarrassing story of like whatever happened to you.
Oh, what did I do?
No, it was his fault. But he said on his first day of like training, he was just out there, just a young kid doing stuff, and he was just bombing balls from like 70 metres out, no warm up, anything.
Yeah.
And he's bombed this torp and it's come off the side of his foot. And you've walked out of training just to like, start having your kick. You'd go out there and probably have 100 set shots and it's just pegged you straight in the head. And I can't remember what happened, if you sprayed him or not.
I probably did.
Yeah.
I probably did. Back to Survivor, like if you get dogged or something like that happens, I've got no filter. So if something like that happened, I'm sure I turned around and said, you serious, man? Like, yeah. So, gosh, I cringe when I think about the way I was at times in footy. I was so wound up.
Serious?
Yeah, so serious. Like, and that's why post playing, I don't really miss a lot about playing the game. Like I loved playing the game, but a lot of the peripheral stuff and the pressure and the expectation, it just had me in knots. So, the person that I was when I was playing, I don't miss those sort of moments where, a ball hits you in the face, big deal, but I know how I would have reacted and it wouldn't have been bad. And clearly, Nick held onto it and told the story.
I think it's his pub story still.
Oh,
to
man,
this day.
that's
Must be a good
embarrassing.
one. No, it was all good. Yeah. But it's funny you say that though. Like I remember, and it's really interesting today because I think the perception sort of maybe I have a view and what people would have a view is just this, stoic leader, work rate, running up and down the ground, up and down, like self-belief, all these types of things. It does sound, now that you've said it, like that must have been as good of a time and as awesome it is to be such a good player. It seems like it would be stressful as fuck as well.
Yeah, it was. So we're dropping it. We can drop F-bombs.
Oh,
I held back before.
No, we do.
I held back before. Perfect. That's fucking great.
Yeah.
It was like a bit of an oxymoron. I think footy for most guys at times would be an oxymoron in that it's the best. It's the best existence because you get paid really well to train, to be fit, to be in a team environment. Like it's impossible to recreate that feeling anywhere else or in any other workplace outside of the sporting arena, I guess. But Melbourne, the bubble, the expectation, the pressure, and that's not everyone. Like I had teammates like Lee Montagna who they were cruisy, right the way through. They still were pros and prepared and disciplined, but they didn't carry it with them 24 hours a day like I felt I did. And maybe that was the leadership side of it, but I thrived on it, but at the same time it was something to endure on a day-to-day basis, that pressure and expectation. I think ultimately it boiled down to every time I took the field, I knew I had 2 hours to either enhance your reputation or diminish it. And I really believed that if I didn't play well, that I could do serious damage to the way people thought about me. And that's the way I approached most games. And I tried to not think like that, but I couldn't help it. And that's what I think wound me so up, wound me up so tight on the way through.
So do you think it was like internally you thought like that, or were you actually looking at external review? Were you like one to read the paper
100%.
reviews?
Yeah, 100. Well, try to avoid it when you don't play well. And when I did play well, I would like seek it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just the honest answer. But as much as you would try to avoid it, it's like driving past an accident on the freeway, right? You should be concentrating and not looking at it, but you just can't help but turn your head. And so I was a little bit like that with the negative stuff. It would just find a way to get to you. And I think definitely got better later in my career. And, I'm fortunate that I had a long, good career. Clearly, success is objective and subjective, sorry. But yeah, like it was a journey. Like it was something, the criticism side of things that I definitely got better at dealing with the longer I got through my career.
What were you like as a kid then, walking into the Saints? First, obviously grew up in Tassie, moved to Queensland. At what age was that?
I moved to Queensland when I was 10.
Really? What was that for, just family?
Just family relocation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a big move, but kids are resilient and I was resilient, so it's a complete change of lifestyle. We still had a lot of links to Tassie. All of our family were down there, but moved up there, and the Gold Coast was great for in terms of a place to grow up, to go to high school, lifestyle, sport, all of those things. It was a really fun place to grow up.
Whereabouts?
So I played all my footy at Broadbeach. But by the time I moved down to Melbourne, Mum and Dad were in Palm Beach and then Mermaid Beach. So even when I was down here, being able to go back there and having somewhere to go to was great.
And you were a cricketer as well?
Yeah.
Did you play a bit of cricket?
I loved my cricket.
You love your cricket?
I love my cricket.
This is something that we did grab out of the book, or somewhere you said before about playing cricket. Because your number one pick, gun cricketer, but never got referred to like Brett Delidio and Mark Murphy.
Pissed me off.
Pissed
me off so
Do you think
much.
you'd be better than them at cricket?
I don't know about better than.
But you're up there with them.
Well, I was a late footy bloomer. So, like the first best and fairest I ever won was at St Kilda.
Yeah, right.
So I never won a junior best and fairest. Under 15s, I didn't make the Gold Coast team. I was a late replacement, bottom age, under 18s into the state team. Robbie Copeland from Brisbane hurt himself the week before the carnival, and I was a late call up. So I was a really late bloomer. But cricket, I made state representatives teams from sort of under 13s onwards. So I always thought that was going to be the path, and then I grew. Things clicked, and it became pretty clear that footy was going to be the path, because at that stage there's no T20, there's no Big Bash, there's no IPL. There's if you're not in the best 12 in the country as a cricketer,
there's nothing else.
There's state level cricket, but in terms of a career back then, it wasn't what it is now. So. And not that I was at that level anyway. I was a rung below, but I was a better cricketer than I was a footballer up until probably 16.
What were we talking? Batting, bowling? Were you all rounder?
Bit of both, still.
Talk us through some of your
not super quick, but I could swing it, and so I was pretty accurate and could swing it as like a first change bowler, and batted sort of five or six.
There you go. So we've got on record today out there. Anyone who talks about cricket and football, we need to start putting you in the conversation.
People say you're only as good as your last game, and so over the last 4 or 5 years since I retired from cricket, I've played probably 8 or 9, 10 games and played really well. And then this year, Tommy Morris got me to go down to he went to Melbourne, old Melburnians, and play a game. And so I went out and I was really excited, and I went and had a net session the day before. I prepared, and I went out to bat, and everyone had made runs, and it was like last over before drinks, and I got stumped on a leg side wide, and mate, I made 2. So you look at the scorecard, and it's like everyone's made at least 30 plus, and then I've got a big fat 2 as my score. Stumped on a leg side wide.
I didn't even know you could get out on a wide.
You can get stumped on a wide.
If you're out of your
I was
crease.
out of my crease. And we're talking amateur cricket, and I've been stumped by this keeper who I reckon let 20 byes go during the game, and he stumped me on a leg side wide, and I could just feel the rage surging within inside me. I was pissed off. I was embarrassed. I wanted to get in my car and drive home, but we batted first, so I had to go out and bowl.
Oh, no.
And so I went out and bowled, and it was blowing an absolute gale. I couldn't control the ball. I couldn't control the swing, and I think I got smashed for like 30 off 3 overs. didn't take a wicket.
Okay.
So
Redemption?
Maybe next year,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty scarred from the experience, to be honest, especially when you come onto a podcast and you talk up your cricket game. I know there's these guys from the team that we played that day that are sitting there going, this guy's full of shit.
That's so
We
good.
played against him and he's a mug. He's hopeless. So,
That's great.
but I do love it. I do love my
Are
cricket.
you a golfer?
I had a moment, I had a moment when I finished playing where I joined Peninsula Kingswood. So one of my best mates, Brendan Goddard's a gun.
Yes.
So I
Good
played.
player.
Good player.
And yeah, good player. He's as angry on the golf course as he is in real life.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
That's just.
I love BJ. Like I love it. I love one of my favourite players to watch.
Yeah.
But he's scary.
He's intense.
He's intense.
He's intense.
Yeah. Jack Nunes, who another one of our mutual friends.
Yeah.
Just have to make sure he's allowed to go on. But I think Jack Nunes is a very good golfer. I think he plays off about 3 now. So
Yeah. He plays a lot of golf.
He plays a lot of golf.
Plays a lot of golf. He's so him
A lot of golf.
He's obviously engaged to the beautiful Jordan.
Yes.
And so Tomo's got the beautiful setup down there on the national.
It's
pretty nice for Jack.
It's one of the best setups I've ever seen.
Have you been to the?
I've been
pad?
to the. I've been to the pad. I haven't been allowed into the house yet. So that's Grant Thomas's daughter, Jordan, who Jack Nunes is engaged to.
Yeah.
But they have a beautiful house down there. It was quite interesting. I went down to the National with Jack recently.
good setup.
Grant Thomas. There's about 14 CEOs, and I think Sam Newman was even there as well. And they just have this lunch together every day.
So the Tussics, they play on a Thursday.
Is that what it is?
So that's their. I hope I'm not speaking out of school.
Yeah,
are I?
we'll get
It's all right.
confirmation on this.
But that's
Yeah.
okay. But so I was playing on these Thursdays.
You were invited?
I was in the Tussics.
Oh, wow.
So I was a part of this group, right? So it's an amazing segue. And so they have the group chat and all of that sort of stuff, and it's just constant. And so I probably got about 6 months through my first year out of footy, and I'm playing golf on Thursdays. And it's a big day. Like you leave Melbourne.
It's a day.
It's a day. You drive to the National.
Which is, the National for everyone who doesn't know.
An
It's
hour
out-
and a
yeah.
half down the coast.
Yep.
You play golf, 4 or 5 hours.
Yep.
Then you're in for lunch, and then you drive back. So you're back. It's a full day.
Yeah.
And I just had this moment about 6 months in where I thought, who the fuck do you think you are? Like these blokes are all 50 plus. They've made it. They've secured their futures. And you're driving down on a Thursday when you should be working.
Yeah.
Like go and work rather than going down and playing golf. And there's a bit of gambling on the course and quite often you walk off the course pretty light in the pocket. Who do you think you are? Like go and actually do the work now.
So you can do it later.
So when you're 50, you can go and do what these blokes do
Yeah.
because it looks awesome, and it is awesome. So I love golf, but I don't get to play anywhere near as much as I would like because I've just sort of made the decision to just knuckle down a little bit.
It's a smart decision. It is, because I think it's one of those ones you can get very caught up with, and especially being members at a lot of those illustrious courses.
What are you off?
I'm off. What? Yeah, no, I'm going through a reshape in my game at the moment.
That's all right. You got to go backwards to go forward.
It's basically one of
sometimes.
those ones where you could say goal kicking routine. You're sort of changing it up, so you're going to make some mistakes to then get better in the end. So I'm off 22 at the moment.
Yeah, okay.
My best.
But you're into it.
I'm into it.
Yeah,
very, very into it. I'm just a member at a local club in Melbourne, but the best thing is when you got mates, that are playing footy and they don't know what the real world's like.
Yeah.
They sort of have these great memberships out at other courses that I sort of just jump onto every now and again.
Perfect.
But we'll get out for a hit.
It's like a boat. The best boat's someone else's.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't waste your money on that. So you rock up to the Saints.
Yep.
We've got sidetracked there. You rock up to the Saints, young boy, 18, number 1 pick.
Yep.
What was that like? What was it like at the time getting there? Who was around?
Yeah, at the time getting there, it was just so exciting because the Saints had clearly bottomed out. So we had the first 2 picks, which was unique. So I was a priority pick, and then Justin Koziczki was the first pick. It was really exciting. Malcolm Blight had been signed on as a new coach. Fraser Garrick had been recruited. Aaron Hamill had been recruited. Stevie Lawrence, Brett Voss, Matthew Capiano, all of these, established players from other clubs. So there was a real wave of enthusiasm and excitement. I was caught up in that, absolutely. And you walk into Moorabbin, first day, and there's the mythical, legend Malcolm Blight up the front, and he's just holding court, talking about all his philosophies in football. And it was interesting because Blighty, as recently as 3 years before that, had coached Adelaide in the 97 grand final against so many of these guys sitting in the room. And I wasn't really aware of any sort of tension, but, you know, it would have been an interesting dynamic for him walking in and for guys like Robert Harvey, Stewie Lowe, Nathan Burke, sitting there having been beaten by Malcolm a few years earlier in the grand final. And he didn't waste the opportunity to like rub their nose in it a little bit.
Wow.
Because he spoke about one of his philosophies in footy was that everyone's going to learn to play a different position. You know, because you guys would remember Shane Allen. You know, remember Shane Allen? He was a backman, went forward, kicked 5 in the 97 grand final, and you just sit there going, oh, really? Okay. That's like, okay, it's a good flex. Not sure it's the best way to win over the new group. And then little things like, you know, another philosophy of mine is if you want to kick a torp in a game, express yourself. You can kick a torp. Go back. If you hit the first one and it spins properly, well, then you can keep kicking torps. But whatever you do, don't go back from 80 metres and try and kick a torp for goal. Because no one in the history of the game has ever actually. There was this one guy.
That's good.
And so, like, as an introduction, I was sitting there just looking at this man thinking this is going to be so much fun. So much fun. I can't wait to learn from him. And it just didn't pan out that way. It just didn't pan out that way.
You can probably see how that didn't work.
Yeah. So my first game was round 15. I hurt my knee in the pre-season of my first year, and my first game was round 15, Colonial Stadium, Friday night against Adelaide. We got beaten by 97 points, and Malcolm got sacked on the Tuesday.
So that was only 1 year.
15 rounds.
15 rounds.
Yeah. My first game for St Kilda was Blighty's last. So yeah, I didn't really get exposed to to any of his lessons really. I mean, we maintained a relationship for a period, but you know what footy clubs are like. Yeah. You move on, and then really it kick-started an era where I look back on the time that Grant Thomas arrived at the football club through probably the next sort of 7 or 8 years as the most fun I had in footy. Footy was just fun back then, and Tomo made it fun.
What's he like what was he like as a coach? 'Cause I feel like now a lot of St Kilda's history sort of talks about that Ross Lyon period.
Yeah.
But Grant Thomas, as you said, and internally people would know how respected he was at the Saints, and even how much he still loves the Saints now.
Yeah.
I follow him on Twitter. It's hilarious.
Oh, he's a good Twitter watch. I'm not on Twitter, but the amount of feedback that I get about Tomo's Twitter, the thing that I like,
he just calls it how it is.
Yeah,
it's great.
And he follows 0 people.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Yeah, it's a flex.
It's unbelievable.
It's so good.
Yeah, like he did a lot of the groundwork in terms of establishing a culture and building a mental toughness and resilience within the group that then Ross Lyon came in and complemented really, really well. So a lot of the success that we had, like we got pretty close under Tomo prelims in 2004 and 5. We were leading those at 3/4 time, and we were a really good team. And then Ross obviously did what he did with us and was terrific. So Tomo prioritised team culture, mental toughness, and selflessness at the expense of everything else. So I paid a lot of attention to North Melbourne this year and the conversations that were had around David Noble and being hard on the group and then almost being forced to apologise because the group couldn't handle it. And I just found that whole chapter really interesting because and I looked at Jason Horne-Francis a lot this year as a number 1 draft pick into a struggling club, and he looked like a guy that wasn't enjoying it. To a certain degree, you can understand that because in footy we deal in absolutes, and you either win or you don't, and we are so reactive on the basis of results. But when Tomo first came to the club, we didn't win. We just didn't win many games of footy, but it was fun. It was so much fun, and Tomo made it fun. And at the same time, we were learning a level of resilience. We were having super hard conversations, confrontational conversations, and those formative years I look back on now, and I've got no doubt the lessons that I learned throughout that period set me up for the next 15 years of my career.
That's a really interesting point. It's such a valid point in the AFL, and this has probably been my biggest, not bugbear, but I think I've been part of clubs that haven't been successful. And the one thing to this day and I don't even know if this is an AFL thing or just an Australian thing, why, but we're so reactive.
Yeah.
Like we just make reactive decisions, and clubs especially like that. And I think North Melbourne and Carlton even previously have been a little bit like that. You just sort of, they jump to the first thing they think, all right, this isn't working, fuck it, sack the coach. That isn't working, sack the president.
Yeah.
Get new people in. They want to have their say, so they change everything. They try and make it on its coast. It's just it's a never-ending spiral.
Yeah.
And you see these successful clubs that go, no, let's not panic. Let's not listen to the media. Let's just keep bringing in good people and time will change. And we'll slowly go. That's why Geelong and Hawthorns, to an extent, have been successful for so long.
Well, I think you can only base it on like you can lose and move forward. I think it's when you're losing and you're not moving forward as a group, that's when the situation arises where, you know, maybe that's what happened at North Melbourne is the people in charge thought, okay, we're losing, we can tolerate losing because it's just where we're at, but we're not actually moving forward as a group. We're not the young players aren't learning the things right now that we need to be learning on, and that's an assumption that I'm making from the outside. But you know that was the thing with Tomo is we were losing, but we were learning. You know, we were improving not just as players, but we were improving as men. So he was before his time. He took us to London on a training camp where this was before teams were doing the overseas training camp thing, and we went over and we trained with Lord Sebastian Coe and Daley Thompson, you know, two of the greatest athletes of all time, and it was an eye-opening experience for a lot of guys that had never left the country before. Next year we went to South Africa. And stayed at Potchefstroom, not far out of the, you know, Soweto, which is one of the biggest slums in the world, and trained for 3 weeks. We went to China for a training camp, you know, learn about different cultures. We stayed in this amazing, it was like a sports academy in Guangzhou where kids were plucked from all over the country to come into this training centre. And they were kids, and we looked at the discipline with which they and the accountability with which they were held to, and we're meant to be a professional sporting team. You know, like there was some we saw some crazy things. It was like at one stage there were these little girls and they were gymnasts, and they were being stretched by these coaches past the point of what was comfortable. Like talking 5-6-year-old girls, and it was uncomfortable to watch, but. It was just an eye opener, I guess. Like it was just taking us out of the footy bubble, making us more worldly, allowing us to experience different things and take different learnings out of different experiences, and it was just so valuable. And it was no surprise that we were able to hockey stick so quickly out of what was, you know, pretty poor run of form. And you know, I think 2 years after winning 5 games, we played in back-to-back prelims and played in finals 9 out of the next 10 years. So. You can lose, but as long as you're doing the work, well, then it can change quickly.
Well, I love your point. I think it's spot on, and I think there's no reason why. So there's no coincidence why Carlton have been able to do what they've been able to do this year. And I think even from when I was there, you look at someone like Brendan Bolton, David Teague. People might look at that and go, "Oh, how good's Voss been?" And I'm not taking anything away from him. He's been incredible, but I know for a fact they wouldn't be where they are now without going through those periods of the other coaches as well.
And it's the conversations you're having on the way through, and it's not applicable just to footy. It's applicable to everything you do in your life. Like, you know, everything you're doing now, well, it's like every decision you make, and as a footballer, specific to football, everything you put in your mouth, everything you do on the training track, everything you do Monday to Friday. You know, in life, every decision you make is either taking you closer to where you want to go or where you want to be as a person or from a career point of view, or every decision you make is taking you further away. It's only one of two things. And so I think you know, it's easier with footy because it's probably not as it's probably more black and white, I think, in footy, because you know what's right and you know what's wrong. You know what professional looks like, and you know what, you know, being indulgent looks like. But from a life point of view, it's a hard thing to do. Like in every decision you make, thinking about, you know, the consequence of where I want to end up as a person. But it's like absolutely throughout my footy career, I use that as a bit of a guide.
I love that. I read a book recently. I'm new to reading. I've got a Kindle. I don't know if you've got one of those, but I read this book called The Mountain Is You, and it's about self-sabotage, all those sorts of things. And towards the end of the book, there was this one part of it that resonated with me more than anything. And I think, you know, I look back and I've just a kid growing up, to my footy career, I used to look back at that and be like, fuck, you're an idiot, you wasted your time, you did this. But it talks about your life in like 5 to 7 year periods. And it says where you are now, write a letter back to yourself 5 years ago and thank them. And you like thank yourself for those mistakes because it's got you to where you are now. And then the other contrary to that is you write a letter to yourself in 5 to 7 years of who you want to be, and you also thank them for what you're about to learn. So then you go forward and you go, every lesson everything that comes to you, like now, the decision is to yourself, what would the CEO of myself say? So that person in 7 years, how would they face this situation today?
Yeah.
And it's been a massive game changer for me because there's times where if it's you let yourself down, like if it's you.
Yeah.
But if you can refer that to someone else, it's not me, it's who I want to be.
Yeah.
And you run that decision to them. You go, well, I got Rui on today. Should I go out tomorrow night and have a bender and then come to the interview, or do I stay home and prepare, or whatever it is relevant in your life? And you go, well, what would the best version of myself, what would the CEO mean 7 years? How would I handle this situation? Yeah. And you're always going to be honest and you go, fuck, well, I've got to do it.
It's holding yourself accountable, right? It's funny because I think about that from a footy point of view because I look back now and I don't have regrets with how I went about preparing or doing any of that sort of stuff, but I do think at times, should I have enjoyed it more? So that would have flown in the face of what I was thinking at the time because I think maybe a little bit more enjoyment might have been that I wasn't as serious and as maybe not diligent, but so it's a tricky one, and I think you can you look back and I don't have any regrets about anything I did sort of during my career, and that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of is that I just know I got everything out of myself, and so the conversation about not winning a premiership always comes up, and that still stings, and I think forever it will. But it's what else could I have done? Probably not played on in the goal square and been smothered by a head, sure. That would have been a good decision. But outside of execution stuff, the effort was a box that was ticked pretty well.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Ross Lyon.
Yeah.
What did you learn from him?
A lot. Like Rossi, what I learned from Ross probably above everything else was that you can find the balance of creating a high accountability environment without losing people. Because I feel like more and more and it's not right or wrong, but I'm maybe a little bit more old school in that I would prefer the stick more often rather than the carrot. Yep. But I feel like it's completely flipped now to don't yell at me. It's a teaching environment. Tell me what I'm good at, not what I'm bad at. And that's fine. Like that's I guess how a lot of people want to learn and improve. But Ross had an incredible ability to be able to challenge really, really strongly without losing the group. So yeah, he was a master at that. And then you overlay that with his strategical nous within the game, and he was just a brilliant coach.
I'm really passionate about that side of things with coaches and challenging and not challenging, or when to be nice and when to be hard, because I think a little bit like yourself, I think maybe the game has gone a little bit the way of that, and to be honest, it is a great thing. You look at how many good players now. I don't think we've had the talent ever of young players really doing what they're doing in the AFL. You look at guys like Nick Dacos, Ginnivan, all these sort of guys. I don't think back in the day that really happened as much. Like it did, but not as consistent across the board. Yeah. But I think then it actually sometimes it then doesn't affect the guys that actually need the hard conversations. Yeah. And I think as long as you know which ones to challenge and which ones you don't, that's where you can get your most wins. Yeah, like it frustrated the shit out of me towards the end of my career. The fact that you just couldn't have the same sort of conversations. So, that 360-degree feedback stuff that I was exposed to as a young player that at times was pretty brutal. But I just think it made you better, and it just got phased out. At least that was my experience late in my career, and it really, it really made things from my point of view a little bit more difficult. But that being said, when Jay Gresham got drafted, we had like a welcome drinks or whatever, and he came in and he was 18. I must have been like 32 at the time. And I ended up having beers with his old man because his old man was 36. So, I was having beers with my teammate's old man as opposed to my teammate because we were similar in age, and
yeah, we had more in common. So I had to accept that. He probably walked in and thought, I'm not having beers with that guy. It was actually pretty sad. Like we'd finish a game. This is pretty brutal. We'd finish a game and. Towards the end of my career, and everyone's in the locker room. It's whatever. What's everyone doing? Oh, nothing. Probably have a quiet one. So I'd be like, all right, sweet. So I just drive home. I'd call Lee Montagna. Hey, what are you up to? Nothing. I'm like, all right, come over. We'll have a bottle of red, and then you'd be on Instagram and you'd see all the boys are like out somewhere. It's at a club or at a bar, at a restaurant, whatever. And we're like, okay, we're clearly out of the loop now. This is pretty demoralising. So things change, and different age groups and different demographics. But I still think there's a place for hard conversations.
I want to talk about your career, you personally, you yourself, you as an athlete, how you got to being the best individual you could be. Mm-hmm. So as I said before, there's a part of, and I hope that this is on contrary to yourself, agreeance with yourself, is if I think of Nick Red, I think of just someone just fucking burning from full forward, hitting the arcs, getting back. I think of Mick Jamison, one of my really good mates. One day he was just spewing up, trying to play on you. Nathan Brown, the same thing. Was that always you, or did you learn that? And why?
I think yes and no. So yes, it was, but it was a learnt skill specific to footy. So I think I've always just been a trier.
So we call it a doer.
A doer?
Yeah.
Trying and doing are different though, I think. Doings, you actually get it done. Trying's with no guarantee of success.
I think, yeah. Well, I would argue that I'm probably a trier because I don't always succeed in it, but I like to do.
Yeah.
Doing
like some people say, don't try, there is no try, there's only, do or do not.
Yeah.
That's Yoda, isn't it? You guys, no, just me.
Just me. It must be a 40-year-old
Just me,
thing.
like Star Wars and Survivor.
No, we weren't alive for Star Wars.
So, yeah, you weren't alive. Far out. That's just whack. I was always a trier. It doesn't matter what it was. I always, like whether it was school, sport. I always tried really hard. And so then when I arrived at St Kilda, one of the first things I did was grab a mentor, grab a role model. And for me, it was Aaron Hamill. Because I just looked at him, really picked it up really quickly that he was an animal. The way he prepared, the way he trained. Now, Robert Harvey was the same, but Robert, like Harves, was 30 and, probably less inclined to spend time with an 18-year-old, not because, he was, reluctant to, just because he was, busy or whatever. I just was a sponge for knowledge and just basically hung off Aaron like a bad smell. Just followed him everywhere, trained, did what he did, and just picked it up quickly. And I always had a pretty good tank, but I did a lot of work early in my career, just on sort of positive affirmations, and I've still got the books from my second year. My first year I was injured for the majority of the year, but about like 8 weeks into my first proper season, my second year, I just wasn't, like I was impatient and I just wanted to be really good. And so I'd had conversations with a couple of mentors with Tomo. I was like, well, what are you doing about it? What do you want to be as a player? And like the sort of underpinning line that I just came back to is, well, I want to be the hardest working forward in the game. So I would just write it and just like 100 times a day. And I would talk about myself in the third person, which is a bit cringe, but I would, that's what affirmations are. So Nick Riewoldt is the hardest working forward in the game. And then just 2 or 3 actions that would underpin that. It's like, burn my opponent with explosive leads, get up and beat them back. Just really specific sort of actions that would tie into being the hardest working forward in the game. And I'd just write it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until in the end, it's sort of after a year or two, that's what people started saying. So I just almost manifested it into existence. It wasn't a skill that I walked through the door with, but I worked at, and in the end it almost became just a bit of a badge of honour. So once people started reaffirming what I'd been telling myself. It just fueled that desire to keep doing it and get better at it and refine it. And in the end, that was sort of my identity, I guess. Like I was different to a lot of the key forwards that were coming through at the time. So I needed to play that way to be good. So I guess identifying my own strengths, drilling down on them, reaffirming them, and then acting them out.
For people, because that's incredibly put, for people that are trying to master whatever skill it is, work, footy, netball, whatever they're doing, what do you think comes first in that? Because firstly, like you've written down what you want to do, but then there's another part where you've got to go out and do it. And then the belief comes. So it's sort of like working out what it is, writing it down, doing it, and then actually becoming it.
Yeah, well, I think it has to be. It has to be something in your mind is achievable.
Is achievable.
It's got to be achievable. Otherwise, you bang your head up against a brick wall and you do the work, and disappointment is a hard thing to overcome continually. So if you're continually not getting there, well, then it's going to be hard to sort of maintain that work ethic. So yeah, identifying what it is you want to be, what you want to achieve, where you want to get to, and then what are the actions that are going to give you the best chance of succeeding, with no guarantee of success, but what is going to give you the best chance, and then you either do the work or you don't. There's no secret. I think that's probably the thing that stands out in all forms of sport is there's no secret. Like there's no magic formula. You either do the work or you don't. And all the great players they do the work. Some guys can bob up for a season, and we see it all the time. Players bob up, have a really good season, and then you wonder why they're never able to recreate it, because you just got to continue to do the work. That's it.
Do you know what's really interesting on that point? And there might be players that pop to mind that jump out when I say this, but I like to think that I got to the stage where I was putting in, every work that I could do it, but things weren't happening.
Yeah.
But as soon as I left, those habits put me in good place into the real world.
100%.
And what happens with this is a lot of players you see in the AFL or whatever sport it is, they go, geez, they're dominating, but they do have those down years or whatever it is. But you see a lot of really good players maybe not be able to transition those habits into the real world, because you need those habits set you up for life. It's not just you work hard and you're going to hit the flanks and then you're going to go and not try hard at Fox footy. Like that is, you're going to take that mindset into the next thing. Whereas some players, for example, one player that comes to mind, Nick Graham, who is a player that I played with and never quite got a game, was always dropped, but he never changed, and since then he's gone into things post footy, and you go, I'm not surprised that he's successful.
Well, like a guy that comes to mind for me is a guy called Michael Ricks, who might not ring a bell with you, but he played early 2000s, and he was just he was an animal. He was the ultimate teammate. He prepared really well, and he gave himself every chance to be a really good AFL footballer. And it didn't work out for him, but he leaves footy. He's worked all over the world. He works for BP. He's worked at McKinsey. I think he's worked at Boston Consulting Group. Like it's no shit, because he's just a worker, and he was always going to be successful because that work ethic and desire to just get the most out of himself was ingrained. And at the same time, there are other guys, that weren't wired that way, and they go on post career and struggle. And that's another conversation in itself. The what happens to players when they leave the game, but. Do the work. Robert Harvey used to say it to me, or like he would walk past, and every time we played together before we'd walk up the race, he'd just say, "There's no substitute for hard work. Like just do the work."
Matt DeBoer is another one, so that it's going to be really interesting to see what he does post football.
Well, he's got his venture capital thing.
Venture
right?
capital. Yeah. He's on about four different boards.
Yeah, awesome.
Athletic Ventures, which has got some of the best athletes in the country on it, and just one of the best operators you've ever seen. One of those guys that he would just check in, call me, then within 5 minutes he sent like a follow-up dot point email of what we just spoke about.
Yeah, I like it.
It's just crazy.
That's
just
great.
a supreme operator. Lastly on you, just to keep talking on the footy side of things, was there anything that you did or any advice that you'd give to those guys now? Look at someone at the moment like Max King, what he's going through as a young forward in the game now. what would you be doing? And it's all changed, right? Because you look at the argument, what's happening at the moment with goal kicking. Matthew Lloyd's come in and said, he wanted to give him goal kicking practice. Like, was that something that you were doing? Would you do that, or you just trust your team? Like, they've got Jared Ruffhead there. He's one of the best, forwards of all time. I think that they should be okay.
I'd take control of my own career.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say if the club are, I know the club pushed back on Lloydie last time, and it's probably hard for a second-year player to say, no, I want to do this, but I think now you get to a point where it's, no, I'm going to take control of my own career. So with all due respect, if you want me to be the best version of myself, allow me to go out and seek these external influences or piece of advice that I think are going to be beneficial. So, you can place all your faith in the club, and that's fine. And I'm sure there are people down there that are working with him. But if someone's self-motivated and self-directed enough to be able to actually want to seek outside help, I think that can only be a positive.
Chris Judd would always say, like, the program is the bare minimum.
That's it.
And he would then go out from there and just do about 15 other things that no one knew about. And he almost took pride in knowing that no one else knew that he was doing them.
Yeah. Robert Harvey was like that, but probably to his detriment. Like, we'd finish training and then, living Bayside, and you'd see halves, pounding up and down Beach Road, pushing a stroller, like going for a 20K run, or he had a sore plantar fascia. Have you ever heard this story?
Yes.
He had a sore plantar fascia, and so that's the ligament underneath your foot, and it's excruciating. But the only way you can sort of really get over it is if you snap it. So he went through like this session where he would stand on his kitchen bench, jump off his kitchen bench, and land on his foot trying to break his own plantar fascia. And I think it took him like 30 jumps, but he eventually did it. Strolled into training. He's like, I'm good to go again. Like, what an animal!
That's psychopathic. That's fucked.
Isn't that crazy?
Anyone who's had plantar fascias, it is.
Oh my gosh!
It feels like you've sort of got a bruised bottom of your foot, like you've stepped on like a fucking rock or something right in the middle. Jesus, yeah.
Animal.
Not good. The part around Saints as well that I'm always really keen to know about, and we spoke about the grand finals before, but I think that season I always bring it up, so it was winning 13 in a row when you played Geelong. I think you'd won 13 in a row. Yeah. That team that was playing at that stage, was that peak St Kilda footy?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we ended up winning 19 in a row that year. Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And we were just in our own little bubble. The conversations that would occur, the preparation. I think back to what we were doing throughout that period in terms of just we were all in. It was all in to try and win a flag, and we'd finish training on a Tuesday, and you talk about the program being the bare minimum. Well, then usually everyone would go home after training, but we had like 12 guys that would go straight to the St Kilda Sea Bars, charge out into the ocean in the middle of winter, waves crashing on the St Kilda foreshore there, and doing recovery out in the middle of winter at night in the dark it was just stuff that wasn't really replicated any other time throughout my career. And I do look back, it's kind of mixed, I guess, because we had such a good group, we had such a good culture. We were successful in the sense that we won a lot of games in footy, but you just don't have that cherry on the top. And that's, at least externally, when you're speaking, I feel like at times, and maybe this is just in my own head, but I feel like at times when you speak in glowing terms about that period, people are always, but but you didn't. So it's a little bit of a tricky one, but it's funny. I used to talk to the younger guys at St Kilda later in my career about that era, and they would ask about it. It's like, your midfield was good. They'd see a photo or something. It's like, we had Lenny Hayes and Nick Del Santo, Brendan Goddard, Lee Montagna, Luke Ball, Michael Gardner in the ruck. It was a pretty strong midfield. Like, how did you guys not win it? It's like, well, Geelong midfield in 2009 was Gary Ablett, Jimmy Bartell, Joel Corey Enright, James Kelly, Joel Selwood. They were pretty good too. So it was those 2 years were really, we were a dominant side, Geelong were a dominant side, brutal grand final in 2009, and we don't get across the line. And then 2010 Collingwood were the dominant team that year, and we really played out of our skins in the second half of that drawn grand final. But it's like we've spoken about a few times already today. You do the work, but you do it with no guarantee of success. You just got to put yourself out there and take the emotional risk to be great, and make yourself vulnerable. Vulnerable in the sense that if you do the work and you don't quite get there, you have to be okay with that. And that's why I think in 2011 we dropped away so quickly, was because we'd done the work and not get there, and we had broken hearts. So it was almost like a subconscious, I'm afraid to put myself out there again. I'm afraid to ask that girl out, because if she says no again, I just can't take the rejection. It was a bit like that. And Lenny Hayes went down early in 2011, round 2. I think he did his knee out for the year. It was like, we couldn't do it with Lenny. How are we going to do it without him? And that's the little 5% that when people talk about how hard it is to go back to back, or how hard it is to recover from a losing, like the Dogs this year, a losing grand final, they're the little conversations that no one ever hears about, that every player would be having internally. And that was our experience.
Crazy. Did you ever think about leaving the Saints? I know there was some reported sort of times. Where, obviously Gold Coast.
Gold Coast came hard in 2009, but we were in contention.
Yeah.
And by that stage, my family had relocated to Melbourne, so the lure was, it was not really that strong. And then 2013, so Saints were going like bustards, and Eddie, like fucking Eddie, he's so good. Eddie Maguire made a bit of a play, so he played it beautifully. It was like very well orchestrated. So Eddie just reached out and said, "Hey, I'm keen to have a chat." And we had a really good relationship. Keen to have a chat about your future and media and this and that. And so I went round to his well done, Eddie. Well done. So I went round to his pad in Toorak and walked in, and palatial, nice. And he grabbed me a Peroni and we sat down and we had a beer. He goes, "Oh, look, I'm actually not here to talk to you about the media. I'm here to talk to you about coming to Collingwood." And I was like, "What? Really? What the fuck are you talking about?" Anyway, so he just lay it out, and he said, "Look, I'd love you to consider it. I'd like you to think about it." We had a really good conversation, and it was something that I hadn't even thought of. Like it just hadn't entered my mind, particularly going to Collingwood. It's like, Collingwood, really? And so the rest of the week passed. I commentated in I think it was 2013, grand final. Was that Hawthorn Fremantle, or was that 14?
2013.
2013.
Yeah, Freo Hawthorn.
Freo Hawthorn. And did the game, Channel 7. Next day I was on the plane to the States, and I sat in my seat on the plane, and I got a text message come through from Eddie Maguire. He goes, "Hey, Rui, I know you're sitting on the plane waiting to take off." I'm like, how the fuck does he know that I'm sitting on the plane right now? Okay, well done. And then he goes on to say, "I just want to give you this to think about while you're flying over to the States." I'm like, "Oh, perfect. Now I'm going to think about nothing else for the next 14 hours while I'm on the way to LA." He goes, "Brian Lake played for Hawthorn in a premiership yesterday and won the Norm Smith. Last year he was playing for the Western Bulldogs, had the courage to make the move, and look where he was yesterday. If you come to Collingwood, you'll be playing in front of 70,000 every week, Anzac Day, blah 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 blah. Your own personal travel agent to take care of your flight." It was just this unbelievable pitch in a text message, and for the next 14 hours, that's all I thought about. Like I had nowhere else to go in my mind.
As you were taking off,
as I was taking off, reception drops out. It's like I can't call anyone. I can't talk to anyone. The person sitting next to me looks like they have no clue about football, so I'm stuck. And I thought about it. Like I did think about it, because in the few years prior, BJ had been traded, Nick Del Santo had been traded, Ben McAvoy had been traded, Lenny was coming to the end, Blake, Kazicki, Milne, Baker, Gardner. Like the nucleus of our 09-10 squad was gone. and it was clear that the club cut hard. They ripped the soul out of the joint, and it was not as enjoyable a place to be as it had been for me. And I knew that the prospect of us contending again was a way off. So, I considered it, and I considered it strongly. Ultimately, the advice that I got was that it was a little bit around my contract too, because the club was, playing. They were playing sort of, a bit of a game where I was on 4 one-year deals to finish my career, which which was something that I thought I deserved better than, and so the offer from Collingwood was going to be a bit more secure and more significant, but it was just in the end a decision, a life-changing decision with no sort of, this is the old no guarantee for success thing, right? Whereas if I stayed, I sort of knew a bit more what my future looked like. Being a one-club player was really important to me. There was no guarantee that if I went to Collingwood, they were going to be contending again, and that's sort of how it worked out until 2018 when I'd retired anyway. So despite his best intentions and the pitch, it was St Kilda in the end. But it was an interesting couple of weeks, and just out of the blue, just out of nowhere.
How good's that play though?
So
he
good.
must
But this
have
is
had
why he's the
people on
best,
the plane.
right? He must have known. Like I told him when I was like not the time or the airline, but I told him that I was flying to the States the next on the Monday, it must have been, and he just nailed it. It was a really good pitch, and that's why he was such a good representative, for that football club for so long, because he did the work.
He definitely did. Did you leave football? Did you retire?
Nope.
You didn't retire?
No.
Didn't you?
I got the tap. Everyone gets a tap, don't they?
Well, that's true, but I thought it was a retirement.
Well, it was.
Because you left, I feel like you left with more in the tank. And that wasn't purposely?
Well, I was keen to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty keen to go on. But it got to a point where about halfway through what ended up being my last year, it was just like I started reading the signs a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, ultimately, like it worked out really well, I think, for everyone. But yeah, I was really keen to keep going. I would have gone till I couldn't walk anymore, and I still felt like physically I had limitations, but that I could still maybe not play at the level that I'd always played at, but a level that would still stand up, in the AFL. So yeah, it took, like, it was hard to get my head around to begin with, that something that I'd always been so proficient at, people had lost confidence in your ability to do that. That's quite confronting, having been at a level where there was, outside of some criticism on a week-to-week basis, which was temporary, people had always been, he's a good player. Like, so he'll figure it out. But when it got to a point where I felt like I'd lost the belief of those making the decision, it was confronting.
Like identity-wise?
Yeah, identity-wise, even just emotionally, like, just because I still felt like I had a bit to offer, and so, like, when you're in, you're all in, and then it was a hard thing to reconcile that I was still all in my own mind, but other people didn't feel that way. So that's the like, how many people truly retire?
I don't think anyone really does.
Yeah. So that's the life of an athlete, I guess.
Do you look back now though and happy with the decision?
Yeah.
Because
worked out.
You've left the game with such a legacy. You know how there's always some players that go, I probably maybe should have gone the year before. Yeah. Like, you left the game nearly at the top of your game.
I definitely don't feel like I went too late.
Yeah.
Like, I joke that I think I could still play.
Yeah. You couldn't play cricket, but yeah.
That's right. But really, really comfortable with the way it works. It's worked out now. for me, it was like part of it was the paranoia that I was going to miss out.
On something.
Oh yeah. What if next year they just bounce? Like they have one of those years where you bounce. So I jumped straight into the media at Fox Footy, radio stuff, and you have to do pre-season predictions. And people ask me, how are the Saints going to go? And I was anywhere from 4th to 14th. I said, I don't know. And a lot of people were saying 4th, you're off your head. But I think it was just my own paranoia that, gee, if they finish 4th, then anything can happen. And what if this is the year and I miss out? Like, so Harves retired at the end of 2008, and then 2009 we go within a whisker of winning a flag. Like imagine, and I didn't really think about it at the time, but how hard that 2009 season must have been for Robert Harvey, playing 21 seasons, and then the year after he leaves, and he went out in pretty good form too. We go and do what we did. I was worried about that same thing happening to me.
It's a very interesting one because I know this has happened to a lot of players since. Yeah. Like you look at even of late, and not to say these guys are dirty with the clubs or anything, but look at even like Mark Murphy and Cade Simpson, who have been absolute stalwarts of the club and will go down as some of the best players to play with Carlton. Yeah. And the year that they finish up and they've gone through all that fucking heartbreak, and then you just see a glimpse. Yeah. Same as our friend, Brett DeLidio, like one of the heartbreaking stories. Yeah. Like it's so tough. So you just don't know the timing.
So every time I see lids, I'm taken back to 2017. So what was a bit of the icing on the cake for me was career's over, right? And then I've got to watch my silly cousin go and do what he did, winning the flag. And so we'd always had running jokes. And so on Christmas Eve when we'd go to we'd always go to my so our dads are brothers. Yep. So we'd go to Ormar and Orpar's place at German grandparents, Heinz and Helga. Very German. Our grandparents had these coasters, like these cardboard coasters that they'd kept for like 20. They were cardboard, but for some reason they'd kept them for 20 years, and they would always work their way onto the table on Christmas Eve. So we would start writing stuff on the bottom of it, and like sledging each other. And I think my sister wrote at one stage, "Will Jack ever play in a final?" Blah blah blah. Because at that stage Richmond were no good, and so there was always this banter back and forth. Will Nick ever win a Coleman after Jack had won a Coleman, and like real competitive. And so then you fast forward, my career's finished. I'm doing the lap before the game with the kids, and James is like, Daddy, I want to run through the banner, because he'd run through the banner a few times. He'd run through it for my 300th, for my last game. And I said, oh, sorry, buddy, you can't run through the banner. Daddy's not playing. He goes, no, not with you, with Jack. So that was just like another knife in me. I haven't played the game yet, but it got to the point where I thought, they're about to win this. So I actually had to leave the MCG. So I walked. I just couldn't handle. Well, it's not like I was wrapped for Jack, right? Yeah. But it was just everything was converging all at once. That my career was over. I hadn't won one. There were like premiership players everywhere at the grand final function. I felt really miserable. But then I saw Matthew Pavlich and Robert Murphy standing there, so I went and stood with those guys, because it was like misery loves company, and we were all standing there going, this sucks, But yeah, I left the MCG in the third quarter because Richmond were going to win, and so I was standing over at Richmond Station, like empty, deserted, just listening to the noise of the MCG, got on the train, went home, got home for the end of the grand final, didn't see any of the Killers stuff. It was just a bit too soon and a bit too sort of painful to have to confront.
Yeah, I really refreshingly appreciate your honesty on this, because so many people lie and say how happy they were for not in the show, just in general. Yeah, I've done it. I've been there, and you say that you're happy for people when you're actually not. But that doesn't mean you're not happy for them. Yeah, you just fucking shattered yourself. Yeah, I was and Jack knew how hard it was, and we probably didn't see. I didn't see Jack after he'd won the flag in 2017 until like a week and a half later, and he was sheepish, like coming over, because he knew that I would have just been so jealous of him, and I was and I am, like I'd love to have been able to win one. I'm super proud of him, of course. At the same time, his family, but yeah, like it was. I think just the fact that the book closed on my career, and he
someone so close to me was experiencing the thing that I wanted so desperately within the space of a couple of weeks. It was a lot.
It's hard. We had Nathan Jones on the pod as well.
Oh,
a few months ago, who's just an incredible,
Same thing, right?
incredible story.
Yeah.
But he looks at it now, and you can tell.
Well, that's even harder because it's your own team.
It's your home team, but also the fact that like he has done a lot of work and incredible guy, like just so well articulated in the growth that it came from and how much he learnt from it. He sort of looks at it now, and as much as he'd love to win the grand final, he almost said that he's a better person now for not doing it.
Well, sometimes you don't get what you want, you get what you need.
Exactly.
And that's how I reconcile it. But every time I say it, someone will go, yeah, no one that says a premiership would say that.
Yeah,
no one that's won a premiership would say that.
But it's nearly more, you're nearly more in folklore for not winning. Because there's so many people that win.
Oh, thanks, Dill.
No, but you are. Yeah. Like that's what it is.
Yeah, it's it's all good.
Hey, look, my old man won 3. I didn't win any, so our ensuing dinners. But I have a podcast.
That's good. He doesn't. Dad doesn't have a podcast.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Mate, on a serious note, I would love to talk about your sister and Maddie's vision and what an incredible impact that's having on the world and the footy world at this stage. If you're happy to talk about it, but firstly, even just if you let us know a little bit of the story and how it all came about, it'd be huge.
Yeah, so Maddie was diagnosed with a bone marrow failure syndrome, which is like we were totally ignorant. Like we didn't even really understand what it was. She was 21. Yeah, so it was a week before the final started in 2010, which was a big period, obviously for our family. Like I was playing in a final series, playing in a grand final. Maddie had just been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. It was a big period. She went through a number of treatments, processes to the point where she was in remission and then relapsed, and so her only chance was a bone marrow transplant. So she had that in 2014, about halfway through the year in 2014. Complications. And spent pretty much the next 7 months. She was in ICU at Royal Melbourne for 7 months. I think she's the longest ever patient sort of to be within ICU without sort of coming out. So just incredibly traumatic period. It's not a place I ever want to go again. Is an ICU ward. So she obviously succumbed to the illness, and we. Once you deal with the grief, you never really deal with it. But once we sort of cleared our minds, I think a little bit, it was almost a bit of what do we do now? Because she was such a strong advocate for the cause. Because it was under-resourced, people didn't understand much about it, and it drove her crazy. So she always wanted to be an advocate for the cause in the event that she got better. And clearly she didn't get that opportunity. So we spoke about what we could do to honour that legacy, and we established Maddie's Vision, which raises funds for bone marrow failure syndrome. So we're about improving treatments and outcomes and finding a cure. So a lot like specific medical research. It's been February 2015 she passed away. So it's been 7 years this year, yeah. So we've raised, over $10 million. I think we're funding 36 medical research projects. We've established a Centre for Research Excellence, Bone Marrow Biobank, which is the first in Australia. We hold an international symposium on bone marrow failure every year, where we get the preeminent experts from around the world to come in. So we've plugged a gap, because before there was nothing really, and made a tangible result to a lot of people's lives. A lot of what exists now didn't exist 7 years ago when Maddie was suffering, and if it did, it might have been a different story for her, which is, it's a hard pill to swallow, but at the same time, it's a pretty incredible legacy for someone to have left. So we're proud of that. It's hard to talk about.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's hard to talk about because the thing about a non-for-profit is it's a business. Like it's a proper business. It has a P&L, it has corporate governance, it has a CEO, it has a board, and as the face, I have to talk about it a lot, but I have to talk about it a lot of the time with a corporate hat on or a business hat on, which sort of sucks a bit of the emotion out of it a lot of the time. And so, I ride the wave of talking about it, and almost feeling like I can't feel anything. And then out of nowhere, it's just bang. Something will happen. I'll hear a song that reminds me of Maddie, or I'll have a conversation with someone and her name will come up and it's just like a jolt and then it just comes pouring out. So I'm wrapped and I'm grateful for the opportunity we've had as a family to be able to leverage the platforms that we have access to, clearly footy, to be able to make a difference. But sometimes it's just, sometimes you just want to be as well. And that's like, it's probably the people that we've met that have been impacted by bone marrow failure, but then have been able to feel the benefits of the existence of Maddie's vision. That's the carrot that keeps the machine and the ambition sort of churning. So it's just a hard thing to reconcile sometimes. People say it gets easier with time, but in a way I think it gets harder because it's longer since you've had a conversation. It's longer since you've had an interaction with the person that you've lost. And grief's it's just a beast, grief.
Mate, I really appreciate you talking about it. It's huge.
I've spoken about it a lot. But to the point, okay. But
to the point you made though about not that it becomes a business, but you start to lose that emotion of it and actually being present and it's something that I probably never really thought about. And there's a lot of things going like that where people have to tell a story and it's well, fuck, this is a story, but what can I keep to myself and still live in the present as well? Yeah. What can we do to support going forward? Obviously, the game's a massive one.
The game's big.
What else is on the calendars?
Yeah, so we it's funny, like COVID for us as an events-based organisation, majority of our fundraising was done through events. So that was a challenging period. We have a number of activations sort of throughout the year. mrv.org.au is our website if people want to jump on and educate themselves or donate. But we've been really well supported by grassroots community, by football community, and we've made a big difference. So we're really proud of what we've achieved.
That's awesome, mate. We'll have the link in the show notes, and if there's anything we can do, we'll be more than happy to jump on board with it. Thanks, it's huge, mate. To finish up, I just want to talk about your amazing media career now on Fox, just dominating the airwaves. I must admit, I actually don't have Foxtel, but I do see. I don't have Foxtel.
What do you mean?
I just don't have it. Like,
what do you? Yeah, okay.
I'm just on a like.
Do you have KO?
I'll have KO. Yeah, so it's on KO as well?
Yeah.
Good. Well, I don't actually watch any footy at the moment.
Well, if you're a sport, like if you're a footy watcher and a sports watcher and not the other stuff, then KO is great.
Yeah. But so the new show that you've got on at the moment with you, Bucks, Howie.
Kath, Bucks, Howie, Brownie, best on ground.
Best on ground.
Yeah.
Is that the main goal at the moment?
That's a lot. It's a big show.
It's funny.
It's a big show.
Howie with his thongs. What is that?
It's just a trademark.
Is it a trademark?
It's a trademark.
Yeah.
I'm a shorts wearer.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm shorts like right through winter. But and people sort of look twice a lot on the really cold days, but thongs is another level.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Because thongs aren't even really cool anymore.
He's actually a couple of times forgotten and he's had the thongs on behind the little desk there.
You can see him.
Yeah. It's not a good look.
It's great. And how have you found... I asked this same question to Luke Hodge the other day. So he's gone into media after being a captain.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, geez, how hard is it to go from being a player in the AFL, a good player, a leader and this? And then I go, because you're having these conversations, you're talking about players in a way that's uncomfortable. But then another part of me thinks, well, being a club captain, you're actually always having those conversations anyway. So is it different? Is it hard?
The hardest thing is remembering how hard the game is. That's the hardest thing. And, Things happen in your own careers when you're playing and you take it home with you, but a lot of the time in the media, you can fire bullets and then not take them home with you, and that's dangerous because you're probably overly critical. And I've been guilty of this. Of course, in my role as a media commentator is being too harsh in my assessment on players or clubs or decisions or whatever it is. And and that's a bit of the nature of the industry. But I think like the thing that I always try to remember, and I'm not perfect at it because you're there to do a job and to call it as you see it, is just remembering how hard the game is, because it looks so easy sitting in the stands or in the commentary box or watching it on TV. So that's the challenge for me, and that's why like a show like Best on Ground, the new show, is, you know, people said I walked around without smiling for 17 years, and you know, it's probably true. Like I was pretty uptight and wound up. So to do something specific to football and have fun with it, like Best on Ground, like I ate cat food the other week.
That's fucked.
Yeah, it wasn't really. It was salmon. But I changed the label.
Oh, I was going to say.
It was a Gary Hocking reference to Whiskers.
Oh, yeah.
Because he changed his name to Whiskers. Yeah. So I did the thing where I pretended to eat cat food.
Oh my God, I don't think actually
so
food.
we've done a lot of fun stuff on that show, which has been really refreshing. Like the contrast between On the Couch, which is hardcore analysis, and then Best on Ground, like it's a pretty big spectrum.
Having range, having fun.
That's
also
it.
Getting in there.
That's it, because I'm a fun guy.
You're you are very funny. There's some funny stories today that I just you are.
I didn't know if you've been serious.
No, you are. You're a funny guy. I'm very impressed. Very impressed.
It's good, and it's good. Like I realise I'm one of the lucky ones that gets to finish the game and then stay involved, because not everyone gets to do that.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
What's in the works for you? Plans? What do you want to do outside of footy? Or even in footy, more with media? Like, where do you want it to get to?
Well, out of footy, like the media stuff is great and ticks along, but it's lumpy because it's 6-7 months of the year and then it's done. I'm still on the cooking train post MasterChef. That was such an amazing experience, and it's reignited that passion for me. So I'm doing a bit related to that with a few partners. Which has been really
a show?
Potentially something in that space, or maybe even a pop up. Put a menu together and do a pop up restaurant. I mean, they're the things that I'd love to do because I'm passionate about it. And yeah, it's funny. Like you get thrust into something like that, which was almost sort of just as a not a backup to Survivor, but that's sort of how that whole conversation started, and just where it's taken me now. And I've been able to tap into a passion that was sort of just laying there dormant, and so I'm loving my cooking. I take cakes in most nights to Fox Footy for
Do you really?
For the cast.
What's your go-to?
The favourite is probably like a carrot cake at the moment, but
it's a little bit boring.
Yeah, I did an olive oil cake.
No, it depends how it tastes though, really, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's got this glaze that I pour in on top of the cake about halfway through, which makes it the outside sort of go
a bit gooey and
crunchy.
Yeah, I like that.
And so you get the contrast then, and the icing's really good. I did an olive oil cake last week with a burnt butter frosting, which was really
So I'm not a big
really
cake
good.
person, and I say this, my wife will be laughing because she always orders cakes, and I say I don't like them, but I end up eating them. Burnt Basque cheesecake.
Oh.
Can you make that?
Yeah, I did one a couple of weeks ago for Howie. Howie wanted a cheesecake.
That is my favourite cake.
Amazing.
Mate. Like, if we can get together, we should make one of those.
Well, I've got a little blowtorch as well that I just
Have you got a recipe you can send me? Because I'll make it and send one in.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Burnt Basque cheesecake.
I
never knew
one today. I wish I knew that.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah.
One of the best cakes.
Baseless or with a base?
No, it's got the harder base.
Got a crunchy base.
Then it's got but a little bit of cheese and custard.
Yeah.
Is it custard in it as well?
So cheesecakes, so it's cream cheese, cream. It's really easy to make a cheesecake.
The best place I go to, I'm in the north side. There's a place called Morning Market near Marion Restaurant on Gertrude Street, and they do this burnt Basque cheesecake.
At McConnell, I think. Is that McConnell? Andrew McConnell?
I'm not sure it is, but apparently it's bloody awesome.
Scott Pickett, actually, I reckon. Scott Pickett, Marion.
Yeah.
So I'm like into that world.
I didn't realise how big the foodie was in you.
I love it.
And eating out? You eat out?
Yeah, eat out.
Where do you go? Where's your faves?
Like
if you're going on say to people, go out here.
Actually, I went to I like Tippo, like in the city. Have you been to just for a quick passer? We are so lucky in Melbourne. You could eat out every night of the year and not get everywhere, not
Well,
go everywhere.
I just got back from
Minamishima,
Europe.
have you been to Minamishima?
No.
It's in. It's just off Bridge Road. It's best Japanese. It's phenomenal. Minamishima. It's
We love
phenomenal.
the suggestions. We'll definitely check it out.
Really, really good. Just a omakase menu, so you sit down and they feed you.
Love that.
It's
Never
brilliant.
think. I just got back from Europe and I realised when we get home that we are the most lucky
Yeah.
people in the world with all the food we have here.
Oh, unbelievable.
far.
Melbourne is world class. So, yeah, I love it. Like, I think probably growing up in Tassie as well, like the exposure to produce down there. So I dive, fish, so we dive for crayfish and abalone.
Do you really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Because how deep do you have to go for that?
anything from, a metre to 20 metres.
And you can equalise, and like how deep do you go? Like what's
Well,
the deepest
deepest we probably go, like anything sort of past, 20, 25
fair.
metres is
with a tank?
compressor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so compressor, a bit less can go wrong, I
Yeah.
think, with a tank. And you can stay down for longer. And obviously, you just, as long as you got fuel in the compressor.
Shit, that's impressive.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. But the whole experience of taking my boys out, they see you go under the washer, they see you bring up a cray or an abalone, they see you prepare it, they see you cook it, and then you eat. Like that's that whole sort of paddock to plate experience is a pretty rare one to be able to tap into.
It's awesome.
But yeah, like that's Tassie's the best. We haven't spoken a lot about Tassie, but I spent a heap of time down there. It's awesome.
I know you listen to the show a lot, but most weeks I talk about Tasmania. It's honestly my favourite place in Australia. Like I've been
go stay at my
Hobart,
place, man.
Lonnie,
Just sits
everywhere. Whereabouts are you?
East Coast. Place called Orford. It's about an hour northeast of Hobart.
Good. I'll have to get
on the coast.
the details because I've been to Tassie now probably I'd say 10 plus times.
Really?
And I still haven't taken my missus over.
Right.
So a lot of the times we go for footy or go for a trip for work, and it's we were talking before we in a real weird conversation before we got here about getting back in the ocean, getting amongst the trees. I think Tassie's one of the places where you can earth yourself the most.
Yeah.
You feel like you are genuinely just. It's just, I don't know, there's something in the air there. It is really special. The water's clear. The
caught in a bit of a time warp too. Yeah, Tassie does have, Tassie has a magic about it. So we get up the coast, and where we are, our place, we don't have internet. We don't have, pay TV or anything like that. So particularly with kids, it's real. It's real time, which is impossible to recreate in Melbourne because there are too many distractions, there are too many vices. Kids want phones, kids want iPads. We get down there, and it's a place now where I've got a 7, a 5 and a 3-year-old. I'm happy for my older two boys to get on their bikes and to go unsupervised because they're not going to find any trouble. There's no way I'm letting them do that around the streets of Melbourne. But down there, go for it. And that's how I grew up, and there's just something real about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
but you have to, mate, you're
Please,
welcome
I will.
anytime. I'll get you. Would you get in the water?
100%.
Would you have a dive?
I've dived before, not for abalone, but for crays, but more up on the west coast in WA, up at Dampier.
Yeah,
One of my best mates playing boat course. I'm actually organising a trip to head back up there end of the year.
Nice.
But it's the water's a little bit warmer up there.
It is. 7 mil suit, you'll be fine. You won't even feel it.
You get sharks?
Yeah.
Have you seen any?
I've never seen a big one, but they're around. Oh yeah, we caught a massive mako a couple of years ago,
wow.
like a big thumper. And so pulling it in, there was a rush and all of that sort of stuff. But then afterwards, I was like, okay, so they're around.
So
I was like, next time I'm diving, I couldn't help it. The photo I've got where I'm like with the shark's mouth. Like next time I went diving, I just had that image in my head, and I was like, shit,
shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
my Bokey's dad, who's a pretty much professional diver, like he does night diving. They go off the coast like hundreds of k's to the islands off WA, and he gave me this bit of advice around like diving, and it rattled me still to this day, but also makes me feel somewhat comfortable. He said, never panic if you see a shark, because that shark knew you were there like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It already knew you were there.
Yeah.
So if you see it,
it's
actually a good thing.
Yeah,
because it's just sussing you out versus. If
the one that
something
you don't
happens,
see,
it's gonna, that's it.
Yeah, gosh.
So it doesn't make you feel any better,
No,
really.
it doesn't. But they're around, and like it's. But yeah, come down. We'll go diving, and then I'll teach you how to cook it.
Love it, mate. Thank you so much for coming in today. It's been incredible. Really appreciate your time, your openness, your honesty, and keep dominating, mate. We love it. You're a trier, you're a doer, and we're friends.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate.
Enjoy it.
Cheers.